they're prevented from working. You know, some of the people are quite highly skilled, and I remember in some previous meetings I've been at talking to Afghanistan, and the guy was actually a doctor, and he couldn't work, wasn't allowed to work. He was, you know, at that point he'd probably been living on £42 a week, which is, you know, a pittance. That's now been cut by the government to £35 a week. That's the economic circumstances that people, you know, seeking asylum find themselves in. People who otherwise actually might have something to offer. A society, if they have skills, if they have talents, then they could be putting that to the use to the benefit of society, through that, contributing through their taxes and everything else, and helping to provide all the public services that you know that we require, and yet the government doesn't allow them to do that. And you know, the Scottish Socialist Party would insist and say that as a minimum, surely people should be allowed to seek work, to find work, and to allow their talents to actually help the society in which they now find themselves. And you know, as an issue, as Richie mentioned, it's an issue about, you know, basic and fundamental human rights, about people when they come to live here. This city, this part of the city specifically, I mean, when I was driving away for the demonstration on Saturday, driving around by Rob Royston, I saw there was the Irish flag, St Patrick's Day, etc. And, you know, obviously in Glasgow, people react in different ways to that, but what it does show is that this is a city that's, you know, to which immigration is not new, to the idea that it's a city where, you know, it's been built on waves of immigration, Irish, Italian, you know, it's a city that has been built on people coming to create new lives, coming to, you know, build homes, build a future for them and their families. And why can't, you know, the asylum seekers in that context be seen as the next wave of people who are going to come and contribute positively to your city, be part of your city, be part of the culture and the fabric of your city? Because, you know, I think it is the case that people coming from different cultures, different backgrounds actually offer something to your community, actually offer something positive to your community. And I think it's important that that's the kind of message that we try and certainly the Scottish Socialist Party has been trying to get out, that as it was, that people said on Saturday, the asylum seekers belong to Glasgow as we all belong to Glasgow, and let's collectively talk about how we can build a better Glasgow, you know, using our combined talents and our combined skills. And I think that issue of unity is the other issue, in terms of it's about unity to fight and to look about how we can build a better future, a better situation for people in places like Glasgow North East. There's people here, obviously, you know, last summer were involved in fighting to save, you know, their local schools. I think it was 5 or 6 in this community, schools closed by Glasgow City Council. And the sad thing is, in a sense, that, you know, we're talking about the general election coming up. If you listen to the main parties and the mainstream politicians, as far as 5 or 6 schools closing in Glasgow, you ain't seen nothing there. The major parties are lining up or falling over themselves to declare that once they are elected, they will see their primary task. They might argue about when, the date, and what's the best time to do it, but they see their primary task as being slashing public spending and slashing public services. And when they do it abstractly. They don't actually, they never quantify what does it mean when they talk about all these billions of pounds that they're going to cut for public services, because they know if they do that, they have to actually talk about what it is they're talking about cutting. Because what they're talking about cutting is they're talking about cutting education, they're talking about cutting the health service, they're talking about, rather than improving this situation for housing in places like Glasgow, they're talking about making it worse. They're talking about community centres, sports centres, the things that give any community any kind of life and any kind of vitality. They're talking about closing them, and they're talking about shutting them. That's what it means when they talk about cutting public spending. There's nothing abstract about it. And they're quite clear and they're quite explicit that they are going to, over the next couple of years, that is going to be their target, that is going to be their primary task, is to cut and savage the budget. So already Glasgow City Council talking about cuts across Glasgow in the region of millions. They're already talking about the possibility of privatising. They're lining up some of your key services for privatisation. They've kind of done it halfway so far with these, you know, by farming large chunks of your services out to these supposedly non-profit, you know, the kind of hands-off charity-type organisations. But the truth is that longer term, they're looking at privatising the public sector, you know, some of your key services in the city. And we all know, we've all lived through the experience of privatisation and what privatisation actually means. It's about jobs. It's about hundreds of thousands of jobs. I worked in the civil service for 20 years. I grew up in Casey, and a lot of people in my generation struggled to find work. And the public sector at least offered an avenue, ended up working in the tax office in Cumbernauld, that offered an avenue, offered an opportunity to find work. That's going to be closed off if the government get their way, because they're making it clear 90,000. The union I was once a member of were on strike last week because already 90,000 jobs have been slashed in the civil service. Again, you ain't seen nothing yet if you listen to what the mainstream politicians are actually saying. And I think, therefore, this idea of unity isn't just an abstract one. It isn't just about, you know, that sense of solidarity we feel when we see other people in terrible situations and suffering. It's a very real thing. It's about trying to build in communities, in our communities, a genuine kind of unity that it's about saying, if they come, as we saw with the schools campaign, if they come for our public services, we will stand together, regardless of our background, regardless of whether asylum seekers or whatever else, we will stand together to try and fight to defend these things, because this is the fabric of our communities that they're attacking. These are the things that, you know, that make communities viable. It's about, you know, the places that our kids are educated, the place where we go for recreation, the places where we go as a community to decide what we think is best for us. We've got to fight to defend these things. And the Scottish Socialist Party, you know, you saw the role of Peter Ritchie and all that in the schools campaign. The Scottish Socialist Party is committed, and as a candidate I'm committed to try and do what I can to build and develop that unity, to build that kind of fight back where we say what's important here isn't what divides us, what's important here is what unites us, and what unites us is they're coming for our public services and we have to fight to defend it. And think about the figures. I've been a socialist a large part of my life, and I don't know how many meetings I was at, and you laughed at and you're scoffed by all the main parties because you talk about, I want to see people getting a decent minimum wage of £8 an hour. You know, I want to see people getting a 35-hour working week. I want to see free public transport. I want to see positive. I want to see a massive increase in social housing. And they turn around and they laugh at you and you say, you're joking. You can never afford that. It's pie in the sky. You're an impossibilist and you're a dreamer. Well, think about over the last 6 months to a year. They've given £300 billion or more to the banks, to bail out the banks, to bail out the profits of the banks, and to bail out the bankers' bonuses. Think about what £300 billion would mean if you translated it into houses, if you translated it into schools, hospitals, and all the other public services. And surely it's about us saying, what is the priority here? What is important here? Is it about our services? Is it about our communities? Or is it about bailing out the banks? And I think the Scottish Socialist Party is clear that the answer is about our communities. And I think, therefore, for us, unity isn't just about human beings reacting to the horrors that are inflicted on other human beings. It's about trying to turn it into something meaningful in the sense of organised community campaigns to defend our public services, and going beyond that to actually raise fundamental questions about how society is structured, about why it is that the priorities in society seems to be making sure bankers still get their bonus rather than about defending our key public services. And I think that, you know, that's what, for me, will be the key issue in this general election campaign, about saying, I don't want to accept these cuts. I want people to stand alongside, you know, each other in communities and defend those cuts. And I think if we can, through that election campaign, if it gives us an opportunity to raise some of his ideas, then I think that will be important, regardless at the end of how many people vote for the Scottish Socialist Party. However, what will be important is if we can get out into communities and argue, if we stand together, if we stick together, we can resist what they've got for us, and we can fight for something that's better and something that's more positive future than any of the mainstream parties will actually try to offer us. So I think that's the main message I would like to get out for the meeting tonight. So thanks very much for that.